Hello, I'm Chad Evans, Executive Vice President of the Council on Competitiveness. And few topics have been in debate as much this year as the future of the U.S. research enterprise. And we're really honored to have with us this afternoon at the National Competitiveness Forum, three national and really global leaders who can help us navigate the pathways that they see emerging for strengthening the bedrock of our country's innovation capacity and competitiveness. We have Dr. Kimberly Baddill, the director of Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, Dr. Michael Crow, president, Arizona State University, and Holden Thorpe, Dr. Holden Thorpe, the editor-in-chief of Science Magazine. So Kim, Michael, and Holden, one of the, I think, lessons we've all learned during the COVID-19 pandemic is that businesses, universities, and even our public sector are creating and scaling new innovations and making transformations on timelines that are perhaps much faster than previously thought possible. And in fact, it was this demonstration of unprecedented speed and agility that prompted the Council's National Commission on Innovation and Competitiveness Frontiers to really challenge the country, challenging the country to achieve a 10x, a tenfold increase in the rate of US innovation. Why did we choose that goal? Well, the Commission found that accelerating research and innovation would be vital to a future shaped by a whirlwind of change brought about by the convergence of revolutionary technologies and, of course, global hypercompetition. I want to dive in now. From each of your perspectives, what must the United States do, and how does our research and innovation system need to change to make a much higher level of speed and agility the standard for U.S. research and innovation? And Kim, I wonder if I could start with you, and then Michael and Holden, I'll turn back to you for your thoughts.
Thank you, Chad, and thanks very much for the opportunity to participate today. From my perspective, the pandemic has really highlighted for us how we think about risk. Mm-hmm. What is risk, and how do we measure and balance risk against potential opportunity? And so in the research ecosystem, when there's no driving demand signal, when there's no crisis imminent, it's easy to fall into a pattern of incremental advances and to try to buy down upfront the risk of these bigger ideas and potential game-changing technology pathways. And so reimagining that calculus and saying, minimizing risk today is actually increasing risk for the future. Can we better manage risk? I'm not saying have a free-for-all, but think carefully through what success looks like and take potentially bigger steps up front and really incentivize that in the way we fund and manage research in this country. I think that's going to be critical.
That's a really interesting point, Kim. It makes me think of one of our former vice chairs from Johns Hopkins University, a cardiologist, talked about if we don't better manage risk, and in his case, he noted we would have never had cardiovascular surgery. So we can't be completely risk-free. Otherwise, that's the antithesis of innovation. Michael, you want to jump in here, and I'd love to hear also from Holden.
Yeah, so I agree with the things that Kim said. And I think what I would add, if you really wanted to accelerate innovation in the United States, we've got to become less simple, less simpleton-like, where we think that innovation is all about Silicon Valley, or we think that it's all about some narrow set of activities. What we need is, unbelievable innovation environments, creative environments throughout all of the communities, making it actually more of a national thing. I don't know why we don't see that if we could be the best boat designers of the future of watercraft, or the calculus involved in the development of something that's a whole new industry. And so what happens to us is that we become, in my view, overly obsessed with one narrow niche of microelectronics or a narrow niche of defense, some kind of defense establishment oriented innovation, all of which are needed and all of which are essential. So what we need is, how do we say that we're not going to be a fully innovative society? We're not going to get a 10x outcome unless we've got all the communities around the country involved, unless we think about innovation and call it innovation across all kinds of things. New ways to create linkages between technology and art are innovations also that could be very powerful in the economy. And where are our centers that drive all of that? Well, there's a few. And so, I'm not trying to be Pollyannish in any of this. I'm just trying to say that the way to think about stimulating innovation is to make it a national project, not a Route 128 Silicon Valley replication project, because that's never going to happen. Those are two unique places. but 100 of those places, and then 1,000 of local communities, and then 10,000 groups of folks that are working together. That's what we've got to figure out how to do. And then I'll say one other thing. I think we've made a huge mistake by suggesting that only research universities drive forward innovation, and the other 1,000 universities out there are not a part of that process. Well, they should be made a part of that process down at the community level. So those are two things. If you really want to scale it, that's what we need to do. We need to actually scale it. And so I would throw that into the mix of things for people to think about.
Well, Michael, I'm struck because I've heard you speak many times on this eloquently, as you've done just now, this idea of systems of innovation, not just one monolithic system, as if that's going to be a silver bullet for our future. And I think you're beginning to help us think about, how do we change our mental map? How do we really think differently about how do we define and even talk about innovation? And Holden, you're editor-in-chief of Science Magazine. You're hearing from the best minds, not only nationally, but globally, about the future of science. What you've heard from Kim, Michael, any resonance, any additional thoughts you want to throw into the mix?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what has been said about broadening the definition of who participates in all this. And another way to broaden it is for the venture capital industry to lose a lot of their bias about who they're going to invest in, which they tend to do largely on personality, and start doing it on the substance of the science and innovation instead. We saw with the mRNA vaccines, you didn't hear all this commentary about, are these people good at giving a PowerPoint? Are they selling the sizzle? I mean, the mRNA stuff was passed over for years. Yeah. Why? Because they never hooked up with someone who was a CEO type that met the emotional and comfort expectations of the venture capital community. The venture capitalists need to start funding substance and stop funding style. That's a provocative thing, but I'm an opinion columnist, so there's an opinion for you.
Yeah, just on that, by the way, so what Holden's talking about, the mRNA example is a beautiful example of where fundamental chemistry is what really underpinned all of this and led to all these kinds of things. And you don't even hear the innovation system even described. You don't know that both of the mRNA vaccines came from academic laboratories who were supported by government and academic chemists who had been doing research for over long periods of time. People don't even understand the process. So I'll just add that people need to become less ignorant about the process.
And they need to stop saying things like, we want a CEO as a force of nature. I don't care if the CEO is a force of nature. I want technology that works.
I feel compelled because you've hit on something I think is really important. There's a mythology around venture capital in the private sector that's the place where these problems are being solved. And it's not. It's the nexus between that sector, the public sector, research universities, national labs, this broader ecosystem that Michael described is really essential to that, because each of them operate on a different time scale. So if you didn't have decades to think about mRNA vaccines, we would not have them, right? So thinking broadly, thinking differently, and understanding the natures of partnerships and collaborations is really important.
Related to that, we're just too, sorry about this, Chad, but we're just exactly to Kim's point. We're too obsessed with the superhero, the superhuman. That isn't even how this stuff works. Even our stories about these people are false. They're incomplete, at least. And so it's really being able to embrace innovation in every community. The Italians, by the way, were first masters of leather, and then masters of shoemaking, and then masters of boot making, and then masters of plastic ski boot technology, and then advanced technologies, all coming out of the same communities. We wouldn't even see that as innovation, but it is, and it's a tremendous thing. So we're just goofy about this stuff.
Yeah, it's just time. This is a great time to retire the superhero myth from innovation. I mean, look, some people would have said Mark Zuckerberg was a superhero, and look how disastrous Facebook has been for the world.
Or if he had at least finished college, he holds up this model that not finishing college has made him into like some sort of superhero genius. I actually wish he understood the social implications of the technology that he helped to develop, but he didn't. There's not even a complete process there. Not to pick on him, but it's just a superhero thing is just a bad idea.
Well, he's a product of the system. It's not just him.
I want to get your opinions on just one last point, because you've talked about embracing innovation, debunking conventional wisdom in a variety of ways. We have a moment in time right now with policymakers on the Hill to perhaps pass transformational, generational legislation to improve our research enterprise. Could you each in a lightning round give me your priority that you think needs to be addressed on Capitol Hill and with the administration?
Just in a lightning round, I mean, they need to realize that the same old model that's been in place for 75 years has been tremendously successful until it's not, which is now. And so what that means then is that we need new models, new structures, new ideas, expansion of the idea of NSF, expansion of the way that people advance things. And so what we need is the same idea, new models, and we need it now.
Just stop pouring money into the same old labs for the same old people who mostly look like me. It's just got to stop.
So agreed. So I'm glad I'm at a same old lab, but I don't look like you. So we're off on one good point. I think those are both excellent points. I think people need to become less ignorant about what the system actually looks like right now. Some of the legislation that's been bandied about suggests folks in Congress don't even understand how the government funds science or where the innovation is taking place. And so first, understand the system a little bit. And then, as you both said, break that model down, decide what the outcomes are you want, and then try to build programs that incentivize those outcomes instead of just pouring the same money in the same spigot.
And just related to that, Kim's own lab, I mean, here it is, an unbelievable world-class research facility that's controlled in a bureaucracy that tightly focuses it down one pathway. How can these labs be freed to become not only their mission-seeking problem-solving group, but also a network center node connecting in hundreds or thousands of other groups to make things happen? So,
panelists, I want to thank you, well, for all of your provocative thoughts. You've also teed up conversations that will occur later in the day around the power of place-based innovation and rethinking boundaries in a lot of ways. So from the Council on Competitiveness, thank you for being with us for our 2021 National Competitiveness Forum.